What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode.
This is deep dish, right?
Yeah, well, let's get deep.
So I'm going deep on both sides.
Chris, how you doing? Welcome to the platform.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, it's good to have you here, and I want to go ahead and tell you congratulations now. We enjoy giving people their flowers so they can still smell them here, and so I know you had just been accepted to the Leadership Nationals class of 2022-2023. That's a big deal, so congratulations. How do you feel about that?
I feel great. I know how challenging it is to get into this program. It's such an impactful organizational community impact organization. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to grow my relationships. I'm excited to see what I can do both in my position and personally to support the Nashville community.
Yeah, I know. I forgot I was reading like 400 something applicants, probably more applied, and then like you get this list of just everybody's amazing.
Yeah.
Like everybody's like just done amazing things in their role or in their lane, and so I can. It's gonna be a powerful space to be in. So
yeah, I feel blessed.
yeah. So whatever gems you learn, bring them back to me.
You got it.
You are the president and CEO of YMCA Middle Tennessee. I'm a YMCA baby, child, son, product of Northwest YMCA. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about just your own evolution through the YMCA, hierarchy. And so before we start there, let's start at the beginning. If you could tell us a little bit where you're from, your background, and then we get into, your volunteerism.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Illinois and sports kid, baseball, soccer, wrestling, kind of whatever was put in front of me in terms of sports, and just enjoyed that. And when I was 12, my mom owned a sporting goods store. My dad was a teacher, and so all day at home, my mom would tell me what to do, and then she would expect us to go to work at the sporting goods store and tell us what to do. So at some point, I said, I need to get a job that is not working for family. And so I found this incredible opportunity to coach T-ball.
Wow.
As a young person. And that was such a great, validating experience for me to impact young kids on a daily basis that I just kept looking for opportunities to do more.
Yeah.
And then when I was 17, I found the YMCA that I didn't even know existed in one town over. I didn't know the Y was there.
Wow.
And this job posting in the newspaper came up, and I was looking for something a little bit more impactful and see what I could do to make a difference for young people, and found the YMCA and was hooked ever since. So I was a day camp counselor, I was a youth sports director, I was a senior program director, operations director, and then a branch executive director in Chicago. And I had a 1-year-old child, and we were struggling to make child care payments, and we were struggling to have enough time for family,
Right.
living in a big city.
Right.
And so I got recruited and stepped away from the YMCA and ran a nonprofit very similar to the Y for 13 years.
Wow.
But I missed it. I missed the Y. I missed the impact. I missed the worldwide network that is there.
Yeah.
And so I was ready to find my next chapter, and I got a CEO job as the YMCA of Greater Omaha CEO, and just was blessed to be back in the organization. And when this job came up, this is the dream job.
Yeah.
Nashville is the mecca of how we impact community on a daily basis.
Wow. And so at 17, many people are not thinking about going into service and being like a servant leader at that age for the rest of their life. You're like, oh, I want to do this. It seems fun. I can, easy. I can play and make money essentially. What kept you inspired during that time as you got older, went to college and all these things, to still kind of stay rooted in wanting to build community and work with youth?
Yeah, I mean, I just have always loved the impact of making a difference in a child's life. One child, children. And when I was at that YMCA day camp, at that time I was going to go to college, and I was going to be in communications, TV, radio, newspaper. I was going to do something like that. And I met the executive director of that camp, and witnessed how great of life he could have that he had.
Right.
He had a lovely family. They could afford the things that they wanted to do. They had a house and a decent car. And then every day he got up and went to work, and he got to make an incredible impact. Right. And when I saw that, and he told me, Chris, this doesn't have to be a summer job. This could be a career. I was hooked. I thought
Wow.
that was pretty awesome. And so when I went away to college, I didn't have a car, and so I looked for a job that was within walking distance. And there was a YMCA in Naperville, Illinois, right next to my college campus. So I went in and said, I love the Y.
Right.
I want to work here.
Right.
And the program director at the time, she was a little hard up, and so she gave me a job as a gymnastics teacher. I probably had no business being a gymnastics teacher, other than I could do backflips and some things. And so I did it because I really wanted to impact kids. And I taught myself how to teach gymnastics.
Wow.
And I had some people helping me, and I just fell in love with it. And any job that they had that they needed somebody for, I was the first to raise my hand and say, I want to try. I'll try that.
Wow. Where do you think your mom being, in sports business, your dad being a teacher, how did they possibly in that upbringing influence you in what you did and working with youth, being in nonprofit, being kind of rooted in community? Did they have that type of same sense as part of their characteristics and personality traits, or is it something that, nobody really did in your family and you're kind of the first one to really step out and kind of immerse your life in that kind of sector?
My parents were amazing. I didn't know it at the time growing up, but they were very service oriented. They were very community oriented. My mom started out and she drove a school bus for the longest time before she opened the sporting goods store. My dad was a high school teacher and a coach. And so my dad volunteered as the Little League coach and a wrestling coach and all those things. And my mom was on the chamber board and really did a lot to help our small town be a great place to live, work, and play. And so I witnessed those characteristics without them ever telling me, this is service. Right. This is how you impact the community. They just did it.
Yeah.
And so that was a really great core teaching for me. And then when I got my own taste of that community with the Parks and Rec and then with the YMCA, I saw that. And now I look back and go, wow, I mean, they were so involved. They knew every business owner in town. They knew the bank president. They were engaged in giving and donating to kids' sports programs. There was a lot going on there that I just really didn't know until I later in life when I realized, whoa, that was what was core to my upbringing and what was important to my family was community was always important to the family.
And so, you're here in Nashville now, and you was in Omaha. And every time I hear Omaha now, I think of Peyton
Manning.
Yeah, Omaha. And you said, this is the dream job. When the position became available, or open, for a new CEO and president, for the YMCA of Middle Tennessee, what was your thoughts on coming here to Nashville, and have you ever been here before, and did you know kind of where things were going?
Yeah, what's really interesting. One, the YMCA in Middle Tennessee has the most amazing reputation across the U.S.
Wow.
So we are very well known as a member service organization. We have great impact stories, and we do a really great job in building our staff. So we have staff all over the country that started their career here in Nashville, and and have moved on to bigger things because they've been recruited away. So that's first and foremost. And secondarily, my brother a few years back was talking about he can live anywhere because of his job kind of in the middle of the U.S., and he was like, I'm thinking about living in Nashville. And I said, dude, go. I'll come. I'll follow you whenever I can. If I get the opportunity, I'll be there. So he moved here about 3 years ago, and I called him up a little over a year ago, and I said, you're never going to believe this. The Nashville job's open.
Wow.
I have no idea if I have a shot at it, but wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
We haven't lived in the same state since I was 18.
Wow.
So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of this really cool thing. I had visited Nashville. I loved it. I had followed it. I love music. I love live music, and I love the vibe of the city, the eclectic mix of different people and cultures and activities is so great.
And so coming in, and it's about to be a year for you, in this August, and so you're coming in kind of right as things are opening back up, because of the pandemic, and that we're still in. What was that transition like from Omaha coming to Nashville, and with a pandemic and trying to catch the vibe, catch the feel of like what's happening and what do I need to be doing, how do I need to do it, and building camaraderie with your team and things like that.
Yeah, honestly, it was harder than I expected, because when I came, we had hit a second wave, and we just started to tighten things back up, and so there was, it was almost all virtual work environment, virtual meetings, virtual volunteer and engagement, and so it was hard. I'm a relationship person. I love to be face to face. I want to read your body language. I want to really know who you are and what makes you tick. And you don't get that same feeling on a screen. So there's a lot of things that we can do on a screen really well, but relationship build is so much harder. So it was a tough start, but I love being in our downtown office. I love that my office is downtown Nashville, because anytime I felt disconnected or really needed to feel the vibe of the city, I would walk 5 blocks and I would get it. If things are tough or you're having a hard day, I just walk downtown a few blocks, and I see 90% of the people on the streets are in incredible moods. They're excited to be here. You got music pumping, you got action, and so it just drives me to be more excited. It drives my mood and does that. So the last few months have been great. I've gotten a lot more opportunity to be engaged in the community, be physically present, to be in the different parts of our Middle Tennessee community, to be at the YMCAs, to connect with the kids. I was at an after-school program last week, and my Apple Watch was beeping at me, thought I fell down. And do I need 911? It was because I was just playing in the gym so hard with these kids. We were playing just about everything there could be. It was just amazing. So that's really feels it for me. That fills my cup, and to be able to witness that in person makes the difference.
And so I gotta say this to you, Chris, just because I'm a Nashville native. These folks, y'all coming from Illinois and California and New York, they taking up my space here, y'all.
Hey, trying to buy a real estate in this town was really probably the hardest part of the transition, was just shopping for a house and not getting it.
Yeah,
7 offers and just trying to be a part of the community was tough. So I'm here now and totally love my community.
And so I want to kind of pivot to community for you. What community are you in?
I live in East Nashville.
You live in East Nashville, okay. And so have you learned, like, being kind of immersed in the community? Have you learned about kind of the gentrification that has happened, and just a lot of displacement that has happened? And one of those places started in East Nashville.
Yep.
And so I always like to kind of ask, but I get this from Will Acuff from Corner to Corner. I don't know if you had a chance to meet Will, but y'all should meet if you don't know who he is. Shout out to Will. But he broke it down to me like this. He was like, hey, there's a capital G gentrifiers and lowercase g gentrifiers, right? And the capital G gentrifiers, you know, they kind of box themselves off and, you know, kind of just, you know, just wait for the neighborhood to transform and kind of stay disconnected and keep all their social capital and resources that they may be possibly able to add. And then you have the lowercase G gentrifiers, and hopefully I get this all right, Will. But these are the people that come into communities, they understand, they know what's going on. They come in with social capital and resources they know that they can put back into community and build relationships and not feel like, hey, you know, I'm here waiting for you to leave type of mentality or energy. And so as you got acclimated to Nashville and in East Nashville, how have you been able to kind of, you know, try to be an asset and be aware of all of the things that are happening in Nashville, some good, some bad. We like to say it's city, but there are a lot of disparities that affect particular people more than others.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that, and how have you tried to be an asset to being, you know, a lowercase G?
Yeah, that, you know, I definitely feel that, and I understand that. And one of the reasons why we picked East Nashville to live was because we wanted an immersion in diversity. We wanted the eclectic mix of cultures that come together. But doing that, understanding that we're part of the gentrification, we're, you know, folks like us move in, and you drive house prices and stuff. So what our family's focused on is making sure that we find small, independently owned, diverse businesses that we can make sure that we're frequenting, that we're not necessarily going to the places that everybody's going to. We're trying to find the little stores on the corner, trying to do that and immerse ourselves in the community. So how can we be involved in volunteer activities? Shelby Park's really close, and so we love doing activities there. So it's definitely complicated and challenging as a middle-aged white guy trying to fit into a new community and knowing that you're part of a gentrification process. But I definitely think that we're about the community being stronger, and we're trying to do our part to support staying that
Rooted,
eclectic mix of
sure.
of long-term history. And then I do a lot of research and read a lot of stories about the history of East Nashville and try to understand that. And the same thing's happening just at different levels all throughout the community. And all of our YMCAs are kind of deeply embedded in those communities and see that happen before most of the community even sees it.
Yeah, and so and that just made me think, how do YMCA's respond to something like that, where, you know, for example, you have the YMCA that I grew up in, Northwest Y, where it's been predominantly black families in that North Nashville Bartow area. And who knows, you know, that could easily be gentrified because of the city limits, and now, you know, you can see the demographic change. What role, I guess, does the YMCA or play into that and figuring out how to still keep that community that has always supported and been there for their Y, while also understanding, like, hey, change is happening. How do we preserve, and how do we also pivot to what's happening?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that we do is we're a community connector.
Okay.
So we're not always the voice of the community. What we're trying to do is bring the community together. And so I think the Y is a trusted source. So when we broker conversations, people come and they listen and they participate. They understand that YMCA is valued, and they want to be a part of that. So I think that's probably the number one thing that we can do. We did that a few years ago at the Northwest YMCA, trying to understand the community when we were going through some really hard financial times. And I think we learned a hard lesson that we have to listen more, and that we have to ask the community for their input. At the Margaret Maddox YMCA, the YMCA was in the heart of the gentrification process, and so there's one place you can go in almost every community, but you can definitely see it in North Nashville. You can see it in East Nashville, downtown, is where you walk in and you're going to see somebody that looks like you and comes from a similar place where you come from, whether you're fat, thin, tall, small, black, brown, white.
Yeah.
You're going to see somebody there because the YMCA is a great place where everybody comes together. And then the other thing that we're doing is making sure that we're driving our business model through an equity lens. So how do we make sure that everybody has the same opportunity to be successful in their life? Sometimes that's scholarship to give a leg up to get your fitness in, and sometimes that making sure that child that never had a baseball and a glove gets a chance to play baseball, and making sure that kids who live in the community are being taken care of on a daily basis.
Equity is a big thing. And I'd like to hear your thoughts personally and also from a professional level on how you have seen equity change in nonprofit through your years just being embedded in it at different levels, different positions, and kind of get into there's still always room to grow, but just how's that conversation around equity made you think about some things personally? Made you think about how can you use your privilege to make sure that happens in spaces and possibly speak up and just call it out, and how that rolls over into professionally, being a CEO and president, to making sure the YMCA or whatever organization that you're leading is intentional about that.
Yeah, I was going to start, Jerome, with equity is an education process every day, every hour for me. I've learned so much in my tenure, but I know that tomorrow I'm going to know more than I did today.
Right.
And a lot of the reason for that is having an open and educated mind, so constantly looking for opportunities where you can learn and grow, and then positioning the people that are around you to feel okay and to be safe to tell you when you're not right, or when the organization's not right, or the community needs something. So I think my job as the CEO is to make sure that we've created that space where people feel like they can challenge, they can push, they can have conversations that aren't comfortable.
Right.
And that's probably number one. Then number two is really looking inwardly and trying to figure out, well, how is our organization making sure that we have opportunities?
Right.
The organization around the YMCA is all about opportunity. We do that with our members and our community people.
Right.
But I think in the nonprofit, maybe in the last 10 years, it's been a lot more about looking at our staff. So YMCA has always been adapted to the community needs and focused on equity in terms of participation.
Right.
But we're so much more conscious about what our staff is going through and trying to figure out all the levels of dimensions of diversity in that staff, and then how do we use that to create a much better YMCA, much better YMCA experience. And in the Y, it's so much, I think it's so much more complicated than elsewhere, because our workforce is, we can have a 16-year-old lifeguard that works Saturdays in the summer.
Yeah.
We can have a group exercise instructor that works an hour a week. Or we could have professionals like me or executive directors who work, all week long and are grown and mature in our work life. And so that's a big gamut. It's a big gamut of ages. It's a pretty diverse wheel. And so we're constantly trying to figure out, how do we measure that? How do we make sure we're doing the right thing? And how do we make sure that we reflect the needs and views of our community? That's an evolution every day. We're trying to figure that out.
What's been the number one thing you felt like you learned personally in that equity piece, that maybe you had a blind spot and you just wasn't aware, right? Like we all have blind spots. Is it something that just stuck out to you during your journey and said, man, I just didn't realize that, or I need to correct that and try to be better at this so I can be better going forward?
Yeah, I think there's a ton. One of like I said, I learn every day, but one of the things growing up in my era that we heard constantly was you need to be colorblind. Heard that every day. That was the solution to racism.
Right.
That's what we live with. And so I think probably the first thing I learned that was really impactful is that's not true. You
Right.
need to see a person's color. You need to see their experience. You need to see who
Right.
they are, where they come from, in order to understand them and to be connected to them.
Yeah.
So that was probably the deepest thing that I ever learned, and I use that not just in color, but I use that
Right.
everywhere now that I didn't used to, because
Right.
that's not how we were brought up as kids.
Right.
So it's definitely a learning process to go through and understand, and then trying to understand microaggressions and how culture plays into what you automatically think, even though I don't think that. Well,
Right.
but you projected this. It's different. And so that's a constant battle to fight through what culture you grow up in, to make sure that you're thinking and seeing and understanding who somebody is.
Right. And I think it's amazing to hear our leaders say that and call that out, because nobody's perfect, and the only way to correct it is recognize it. Right. And you mentioned something, putting people around you that'll say, hey, I think you probably could have done this a little different or said this a little different, or maybe you didn't realize that. And people's ego can get in the way of that. And positioning that creates a environment of fear where I don't think I want to say that to the CEO and president, right? Because what kind of position would they put me in? And so hearing you say that, and hear you say that, hey, I want people around me that's gonna let me know, respectfully, right, in a professional, but let me know so I can be a better team player and make sure that it is a brave and safe space where people can feel comfortable to talk about these things. So I just think that's amazing. Kudos to you for carrying that energy.
Thank you. I mean, I try. It's a work in progress, and one of the things that it blows my mind because of my background and just my love for the job, that people automatically as a CEO title they separate you, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't always get the
Right.
real story.
Right.
So it's really important to get the folks around you that are hearing the regular story, because they don't have that title,
Right.
to tell you this is what's really going on, and for
Right.
you to have an open mind to say, okay, I'll listen to that.
Right.
I don't see it, but I'm not going to see it. When I walk into a YMCA, if they know who who I am, or if they know I'm coming, it's cleaner, it's happier, it's doing all the right things because they want to live up to this CEO title. So I think that's really important, especially when you're working with trying to be the best organization in terms of serving all.
But now this is good. It's good to hear, Chris. And like it makes me think of another question for you. Because you went through so many like evolutions and roles within the nonprofit sector and with the YMCA, like that feeling of like CEO and president, like how do you, like, can you tell people shift? Is that weird? Like you can say like people shift when you walk into the door. How do you try to I guess break the ice, right? To let people know like, hey, like I do have this title, but I'm Chris, you can we can have a conversation, and you can talk to me as if like I'm human too.
Yeah, I it took me probably 10 years of being a CEO to figure that out. That
Wow.
people saw me differently than
Yeah.
I really am, and they you have this power just by walking in the room. I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. So when I finally realized that, I said, okay, well, it's going to be important for me to make sure that I'm going beyond to make sure people understand who I am. And so I spend a lot of time with relationship building wherever I can. So can I, if I'm going to need to connect with an employee or a community member, to spend one-on-one time with them or small group time with them, or where we can really connect and I can get to know them as a person and they can get to know me as a person. And then I just try to be authentic. Like I told you at the after school program, I show up and I play.
Yeah.
And so if they're dancing, it's a little embarrassing because I'm not I'm probably not a great dancer, but I'm going to dance with them.
Right.
You know, when I show up to, we had our training. We have 119 before and after school programs throughout Metro Nashville, and I went to the training with the staff that are leading those programs, and I participate. You know, I'll sit on the sideline and do my talk and
You
tell
engage,
them
yeah.
I'm going to go play the games and learn the programs with them and go through leadership training. So that's one of the ways I try to do that. I can't always offset it. I you know, the title is the title, and people will adjust to that. But hopefully my authentic self, and then when people see me do that, and somebody says something, they can correct them and go, no, Chris is real.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about my experience with him, or let me tell you how he impacted my life.
You mentioned the word power, which is a very powerful word, but it's a loaded word too. Power is a loaded word, and I always like to ask, like my judges, attorneys, these political figures, like what that means to them. So I want to ask you, like, what does that word power mean to you, and how do you use your power to build community?
Yeah, you know, I think that like we talked about, the position or the organization you're with or the title you have, you know, that power can be yielded in a lot of different ways, and it can be used for good, bad, and indifferent. And so one of the things that I found really important is when I need to use that to get people in the room, when I need to feel the power to bring people together.
Right.
So it's not the power to yield over people or to tell somebody what they need to do.
Right.
It's, you know, I can oftentimes maybe pick up a phone and get somebody to answer it. And not always, because I feel the same way. When I first got to Midland, Michigan as a leader, I met the CEO of the Dow Corning Corporation. It's
Oh,
a
wow.
Fortune
Yeah.
500 company, and he calls up and says, I want to connect with you. And I said, great, let me go to your office. You know, no, I'll come to your office. You know, I'm freaking out. I'm a CEO, but he's a CEO, right? I'm just a nonprofit guy. And so I looked at that and went, wow, you know, that scares me how I feel about that. I'm
Right.
sure somebody's doing the same with me because I have that CEO title. So
Right.
he showed up in a polo and khakis, and he sat in my office, and we sat around the table, and we just chatted.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized he's just a human being that has a title because of
Right.
his experience.
Right.
And so I think I try to emulate that and try to make sure that I'm when I need that opportunity where I can say, you know, we just can't get people to solve this issue.
Right.
How do we get people to the table? Well, all right. Well, what's the power yield that you can do? Is it a phone call? Is it an example? Is it your influence? You know, when I was in Omaha, we needed a Y in a particular area that just didn't have any resources. It was a desert. It was a recreation desert. It was a community desert. But we couldn't fund it.
Right.
And I remember going to the superintendent of the time and saying, you know, the head of schools, and saying, you know, what's going on with your life? And he was telling me they needed a school in that community. And I said, well, I need a Y in the community. And we said, well, how do we use the fact that I'm the superintendent of the largest district in Nebraska, and how do the YMCA, which is a well-respected community asset, how do we use that power together? And we use that power to open doors.
Wow.
We use the power to make a phone call and get a meeting with Susie Buffett, Warren Buffett's daughter. That's, you know, Susie Buffett didn't have to fund us.
Right.
She had more financial power than we did. But we had the power to say, these two organizations are working together, and we'd like a meeting.
Right.
And so that, I mean, those are like specific examples where I think where you take your position and your status in the community and you try to figure out how to use that.
Right.
And I don't know if we call that power or not, but
I think it is.
I reflect on that and go, that's how I want to use my power.
Yeah, because you know we have you know people power, and I think we just have to figure out you know how to use that collective power that we have to do exactly what you and the superintendent did. just come together and figure it out and use the resources you had and use the resources they had, and got Susan Buffett on the phone, but so Nashville is growing. Our nation, has many crises. Educational crises, mass shootings, hunger, poverty, hygiene, housing. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. What role does the YMCA of Middle Tennessee play in helping mitigate some of those crises that we're facing here in Middle Tennessee in the greater Nashville area? And kind of, what would you like to see, the YMCA kind of play in that role as well?
Yeah, the best thing about the YMCA and why I've always been so committed to it across the U.S. and really across the world is that the Y adapts to the community's needs at the time.
Okay.
So in a point in history, we were a Bible study for young men who are coming to an industrial city. We've been battered women's shelters. We've been child care providers. Health and wellness experts. So we do that because we are constantly understanding what our community needs and then trying to adjust to that. So I'm hopeful, and I believe strongly that the YMCA of Middle Tennessee has done a great job of that. And so it's about listening and learning and seeing what the needs are. And right now, I think about mental wellness a lot because of all the things that are happening in the world. I look at my own life and go, wow, there was a time where I had to turn off the news. Right. I couldn't look at the Google homepage. I just needed to get away from it. And so I think about our role in that as a YMCA in society, and I think there's a lot we can do. We bring people together in a world that's socially isolated. Youth are socially isolated because they're on their phones or their devices. So we look at how are opportunities where we can bring people together, we can help their boredom, we can help their physical health, which is going to help their mental health, and we can put them in positions to be successful and be a community. Right. So even if you don't have a feeling like you're a part of the Middle Tennessee community, you can be a part of that Northwest YMCA. Right. And you can feel like people care about you. Right. And if you don't show up to the YMCA, they're trying to figure out why and giving you a ride, doing what you have to do. And I think that builds character, that builds community, and that strengthens our community. Right. We're even looking at youth on their devices. When the pandemic hit and we realized that these kids were so socially disconnected that they would get connected during the day and then they deconnect with their devices. We said, let's figure out how to work with them where they're at. And so nationwide, I'm a part of a YMCA of the USA group that's looking at esports. How do we use the sport? Right. So we invented basketball and volleyball. YMCA did, and we did that for a reason. We needed physical exercise. Right. We needed connect people together, and so we never set out to use basketball to get somebody to the NBA or to make them great basketball players. We used basketball to figure out how to make them better human beings. Right. We used volleyball, we used t-ball, we used soccer, we used weightlifting. So we want to use the esports to help young people become better human beings. Right. So if we can connect them and teach them how to interact, even if it's online, that's a step in the right direction to creating great mental health and better people.
Yeah, and that's like a hell of a pivot too, thinking about it, because growing up, we didn't have the technology, right? So when we thought about the YMCA, it was all physical activity, right? Was this dodgeball, foursquare, basketball, whatever it was there, we was playing, and I wouldn't have thought about like the YMCA thinking about, okay, well, how can we implement digital like learning and digital growth? But this is where our youth are today, and this is how they're engaging. which is fascinating.
Yeah, we look at that. We look at other things that the YMCA is doing, and the pandemic really helped us open our eyes to a couple community issues that were way beyond what we understood. I told you we have 119 after school and before school sites. Every one of those sites, we feed kids.
Right.
It's important, right? So we think about it in feeding that kid. And when the pandemic hit, we realized, it's more than just the kids that are having this food insecurity issue. What do we do about that? Do we do something about that?
Right.
Whose role is that in the community? And so when we looked around, we partnered with some food organizations, nonprofits, and we said, okay, we have this logistics resource. We have staff. We have access to 119 locations throughout Middle Tennessee. How do we use that to the advantage to help the community? So we've served hundreds of thousands of meals throughout the pandemic, and we realized, there's some things that we can do really well with this. So now we utilize our Camp Widgie kitchen in Antioch to cook and serve and deliver food throughout the region.
Wow.
That maybe the schools were doing, and because the schools were closed, they couldn't do.
Wow.
Maybe a shelter was doing. And so we're able to utilize the resources differently and think about how we serve the public.
Yeah.
We do that. We had, with schools closed, there are people, believe it or not, that can't work from home.
Right.
You
They
work
have
at a
to go to
gas
work.
station, you
Yeah.
have to be at the gas station.
Right.
If you are a housekeeper, you have to be wherever that takes you. There's service organizations and businesses all over town. And so when the pandemic hit, we said, well, the kids still have to go somewhere. They have to get homework help. The parents have to go to work. And so we opened up free childcare and made sure that everybody, hospital workers, had childcare for their kids.
It's unfortunate that sometimes it takes a pandemic for us to recognize some things that are happening right underneath our nose, right? But being able to respond to it is just as important. But also being able to do what you said you all are doing is think about other things. Like, okay, what else are we possibly missing that we're not seeing right now that we need to figure out? How can we better service our community with the resources that we have, and partnering with other people in Nashville or the Middle Tennessee area? That pandemic, man, it opened up a lot of eyes and just showed how much the resources that we just do every day, it really helps families, right? It really helps family, and once that's not there anymore, people could literally not eat.
Right. And they were. And we see it too. We even see it in perceived wealthy communities at Green Hills, at the Green Hills YMCA. We have kids coming from the high school starving.
Right.
So every Friday we do Pancake Friday.
Right.
And they just have a great time cooking together. They learn how to make pancakes. They're talking, and then because of that, we started seeing that these kids were not just on Fridays, they were having issues.
And so you mentioned this, and I'm glad you meant this because this is an awesome, I think, question. You said perceived like wealthy communities. You can go in particular communities, and based on wealth, you might see particular stores or not see particular stores. How has the Y been able to kind of be a connector again? And whether you're in Green Hills or whether you're in Northwest or whether you're in East Nashville or West Nashville, that you can enjoy the same experiences and the same resources regardless of your financial status at that particular time.
Yeah, I think we have a benefit of some of the types of work that we do because everybody kind of looks the same when they're sweating in gym clothes. so that helps.
Yeah.
Throughout my career, I have seen it day in and day out where on the same piece of equipment right next to each other, you have the CEO or you have a music star. We have plenty of country music stars that are at the YMCAs, and they're on a treadmill next to somebody who is near homeless. And they're talking and they're doing the same thing. And they don't care what their social status is.
Right.
What they care about is hey, we're getting a workout. Oh, how many miles did you run?
Right.
And how you feeling about trying this other thing? And so that's helpful.
Right.
And that happens because of the why for really a couple main reasons. One is because we don't want anybody to miss out on that. So there's a sliding fee scale, and if you don't have financial resources for the YMCA, we raise money, you're gonna get the opportunity to be a YMCA. So that's first and foremost. And then the second one is strategically positioning YMCAs. You see YMCAs in communities that a for-profit business doing fitness, they're not there.
Right.
They're not doing it for community support. They're doing it for the bottom line.
Income, yeah.
And so we raise money, we work together, we surround all the YMCA Middle Tennessees, we build those resources together, and it affords us the opportunity to be in communities for all people.
Right. Operations. Right. There's a lot of YMCAs, and I have to say this because the YMCA just lost a gem in Jahari Matthews. Shout out to Jahari, good friend, a good friend of mine. And again, she's at my Northwest Y, and we did some connecting after the tornado, March 3rd tornado, to financially support some families in the North Nashville area that were also members at the Northwest Y. So shout out to Jahari. But operations, what does that look like for you as a CEO and president? Because sometimes, we might think, hey, y'all just sit in the desk and just relax and drink coffee and, point. But what does the daily operations for you look like at the YMCA and going throughout the community?
Number one, it's people. So I spend most of my time with people, for people. We're talking about performance. We're talking about opportunity. We're talking about how to serve. We're looking at data and metrics to see, where we could do better, how we can make sure that we're sustainable, who do we need to meet with, do quite a bit of fundraising and connecting with community leaders who have resources that can support the business of the YMCA. So that's most of my day is doing that, and just making sure that we have a really good business model that supports. The YMCA is unique. We have, for people who can afford to pay, people most of the time pay what it costs us to support, and then we fundraise, and then we do programs, and so that we have these different revenue streams that support it as a nonprofit and not just fundraising.
Right.
Fundraising is not 100% of our budget. We have a healthy mix that allows us to stay sustainable, and that we're going to celebrate 150 years in Nashville in 2 years, 2025, 150 years.
It got to be a big party, a big YMCA party.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
The YMCA is clearly about to grow, with a new facility here in Nashville. And Nashville is growing. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the new building and the facility will support the growth of Nashville, what that would look like, who that will impact, and kind of the hope of the impact that it'll have on Nashvillians?
Yeah, so we get a lot of press and communication about the big project, right? We're going to have a 60-story building, the biggest in the state of Tennessee and beyond. We're going to have that because of this partnership that we've created with a developer in town. We're going to have a brand new YMCA, state-of-the-art, incredible, attached to a 60-story residential tower across from one of the biggest developments in Nashville, the Yards. We're just in a perfect place right now to be able to serve the next generation of Nashvillians at the downtown branch on Church and YMCA Way. That's going to be amazing. But what doesn't get a ton of fanfare is all the other stuff that we're doing to invest in our community.
Yeah.
Partnering with Blue Cross last year, we have a $6.5 million campus. It's the most amazing playground you will ever see in your life. It has a splash pad, basketball, pickleball courts, soccer field, trails, fitness park, outdoor fitness park, playgrounds,
Wow.
universal amenities,
Wow.
bathrooms. It is the most amazing place. That's at the Northwest YMCA.
Right.
So we invested $6.5 million there. In Brentwood, we have this amazing $26 million project to create a regional destination with a brand new YMCA added on to our other YMCA.
Right.
Really doing some great work there. In Green Hills, we have an amazing project to expand the services that we do there. And we're doing refreshes at almost every one of our YMCAs. So you'll see a brand new locker room in one of our communities. You'll see new paint and new lockers and new bathroom fixtures in another. We're saying right now, we're doubling down. The community needs us now more than ever, and they need to make sure that they have an organization that is comfortable, embedded, and cares about me.
Right.
And so almost every YMCA throughout Middle Tennessee is getting touched in some way, in addition to these crazy cool projects like the downtown YMCA.
Yeah, I think the downtown YMCA is going to be a social club. People just be there to hang out. Hey, what's going on? Yeah, you working out? No, I'm just chilling.
Well, what's really cool about the downtown YMCA is we get to reimagine what a YMCA is going to be like in the future. And so, for example, we know that more and more people are moving downtown. They're moving into smaller spaces, and yet they're working from home. So if we think about that and go, wow, you're going to move into a smaller place without a car, and you have to work from home, that's going to get pretty intense. So we're building Zoom rooms within the lobby.
Wow.
Right next to the childcare. So what you could do is take you have a meeting and you just need an hour, but you work from home, but you need that hour. The 2-year-olds can't interrupt you.
Exactly.
Come to the YMCA, you put your 2-year-old in a daycare program, you do your meeting, and you go home afterwards.
Wow.
Or you do your meeting, you do your workout, your child's just had a great time playing and learning and growing and coloring and doing all the things that kids should do. They're socializing with new friends and in a diverse environment, and then they go home to their small apartment or whatever.
Will that affect the membership costs, or will that?
No.
Okay.
No, we see that as a membership opportunity for people to, it's again going back to the YMCA as a community connector. Most people see us as, whether it's the gym and swim and they're lifting weights or you're doing on the treadmill, but that's not it. When you walk into the Northwest YMCA, you see aunties and cousins, and they're not related to you, but you're so connected. They're sitting in the lobby and they're talking about your day and how's your kids doing. That happens in Franklin, that happens in Brentwood, that happens in Clarksville. So when you're doing that, you're creating this YMCA that is for that space. We're going to have 20,000 people live in a 5-mile walking radius of the downtown YMCA.
That's crazy.
10 years ago, there were very few people. It was all about the people who worked downtown.
How many people, because you keep bringing up this connector, and I'm curious, how many folks are knocking at the YMCA's door to say, hey, I'm a community organizer, or, I want to build community power in my community. How can I use this space to do that? Are many people doing that? And the people who are trying to do that or would like to do that, is it a cost associated with that? What does that look like? Or how are those opportunities set up?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because the YMCA of the old days, we used every inch of the Ys. All day long with programming. And what we're trying to do in the new YMCAs, or the renovated Ys, is create a more community-friendly space. So in Green Hills, for example, we just opened the Frisk Community Wing. And it's just an amazing space that has a kitchen, it has meeting space, it has a teen facility, and it has kind of a comfort lobby. And so what you can see anytime throughout the day is you might have a community organizer who's connecting to activities and doing a meeting. The other room you might have, I think last time I was there, 7 ladies playing mahjong in one room. And then we'll have pancakes with the teens in the kitchen in their teen space. And so we're trying to build more of those spaces so that we can be, we used to, at the YMCA, we used to do that organically and accidentally. Now we're trying to be more forthcoming and say, how do we promote this? How do we make this better? And part of that is having spaces that allow us to do that.
I'm excited to to see what these new YMCA's are gonna look like, and also, hey, do some deep dish conversations there. Bring some peace in there, for sure. You talk about community and families, and that's what the Y represents. So I'm curious on if you can share with us, a story, or two from a family or a YMCA family member that really kind of just stuck with you and said, like, this is why I signed up to do this. This is why I wanted to be a part of this YMCA family, because stories like that, I know that I'm impacting community.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many, thankfully, that I get to hear and experience on a daily basis, and that just drives you and keeps you going. And during the pandemic, you just didn't get to see them in person, so that was tough. And now we're seeing them again. One of the really cool things that I've seen most recently is we had a teen who was coming from high school to the Green Hills YMCA, this new teen space that we created. And was coming over for pancakes with the teen director, and we started hearing the story about the mom being abusive and having male figures in and out of his life, and didn't have a place to go after school where he felt safe, and he couldn't have been more excited and elated just to have a couple pancakes.
Wow.
With a couple kids. And the day that I was there last, a couple kids said, "Hey, let's go swimming." But the kid says, "I've never swum before. I don't know how to swim." They all got life jackets on, so his friends from this teen program, and so as he wouldn't be embarrassed or feel bad about having to put a life jacket on because he didn't know how to swim, never been in a pool. Right. They all put life jackets on and jumped in the pool, and they were swimming, having a great time.
Yeah.
Just enjoying life.
Yeah.
And then he came back the next day, and he was like, I'm just hungry. I just don't get any food. And so our staff goes, okay, let's get you some food. And so now because of that kid helped us identify that there was a bigger need out there. And in Green Hills, where you don't normally think about that, we got a donor that came in and said, what are your hardest needs to serve? And we said, well, we're finding a lot of these kids have no food. So they said, we're going to fill your pantry every month. Every month you're going to have a full pantry. And they showed up with tons of groceries, and then they said, we're giving you $1,000 a month to make sure those kids eat.
Wow.
That kid and his friends came back to the Y the next day, and they tried to bet the teen director. And I don't remember what the stakes. I don't remember what the activity was.
Right.
But the stakes were, you can't leave for 4 years because you need to be here for us for our high school time.
Wow.
So if we win, teen director, you can't leave the YMCA for 4 years. And we're like, win. We want those kids to win.
Right.
We want those kids to win.
Wow.
And so that just that simple story, and that was just a few weeks worth of experiencing this young person, a high school freshman who needed a place and people around him.
And know what that also tells me too, Chris, is that he felt comfortable enough to share that with staff there. And it was, because that's embarrassing. Don't nobody want to have to admit that. But if you have people that you feel that truly care, and you're in a real brave space, in safe space, that's something that you could, say, hey, I'm not eating, and not be ashamed and have no shame about that. That's even more amazing to me. Because he could have just not said anything, and you all would have never known the need, and maybe a friend or something might have said, "Hey, maybe." But for him to say that himself and come out to that teen director and be able to see the response to it as well, that's amazing.
Yeah, do that in such a short time period. I mean, we had only had the center open for a week when that happened.
Wow.
So we knew right then and there. Well, we did the right
Yeah.
thing. We made a good decision. It wasn't my decision. I wasn't here
Right.
for that. But they did a great job
Right.
designing that facility to be
Yeah.
connected to community and to kids like we've never been before.
Do you, because of the growth of Nashville and just because of life, do you foresee any challenges with the strategic planning going forward with the Y? I'm not sure what those challenges may look like, but I just assume it's always hurdles and barriers to go over in any type of business model. Do you foresee any of that? What does that look like? Or does it, or is it things kind of just looking great,
I think in some cases the growth is just amazing, and it's really supportive of what we do. Mm-hmm. And we're always fascinated when we see people come from other parts of the country and they say, where should we go? And everybody in town goes, you got to go to the Y. I mean, there is really no other choice. You go to the Y when you're here.
Right.
So to be connected like that's great. But with that growth means there's a tremendous amount of more people that need support.
Right.
The cost of living in Nashville has soared.
It's ridiculous.
That's created some really tough situations that, the YMCA could solve surface level issues in some cases, really deep issues like in childcare. Mm-hmm. But to understand all the other things that come with that cost of living increase, it's tough. And we rely on, we have 2,500 employees.
Right.
Most of those employees are part-time people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those are younger people. Right. So we hire a lot of teenagers and 20-somethings. And to keep up with the cost that they're having to pay for gas, to live if you're a young person, to keep up with that, and for us to be able to keep up with the employee wages and the needs and the mental health status of our employees, those are massive challenges that we face. We've hit head on, thanks to some grants and some things, we've been able to elevate our lowest level of employees pretty considerably over the last year. It's never going to be enough, but we're doing our best. Our lowest paid employees now have been significantly elevated from our minimum wage before. And we're trying to continue to keep up with the cost of living that happens in Nashville, and do that while providing economic value for our membership where people do pay for it.
So as the CEO and president, when you talk about wages and like a livable wage, is there a role for you to speak on those things with, the mayor or, city council and the housing committee, these things that they're gonna, directly affect staff, and staff's gonna say, hey, Chris, gas just went up, our rent is going up, and I think I need a few more dollars, right? Is there spaces for leaders like yourself to talk about those things and try to figure out kind of like where is that threshold, where is that line, like, because at some point it's like we'd love to pay everybody $30 an hour or whatever. But that's just not feasible for many organizations, right? But as we see Nashville grow, like, it's getting ridiculous. Or you have to see people commute, right? Yep. Then you see, people have to drive from Clarksville into Nashville, and and things like that. Is there a role for you to speak on those things, or a space, or how does that from a leadership position, knowing that like, hey, this. Yeah. Where's this thing gonna go, and how am I gonna be able to respond to it?
Yeah, that's where the YMCA being so connected to the community is important, because I can be called on in those situations. We have a lot of conversations with the Chamber of Commerce, with local representatives, both state and national, to be honest with you. We have a voice at the table. It's that power conversation we had earlier. Is how do you use that to your advantage? And so it's one thing to be Amazon or Asurion, and your
Oracle,
lowest
yeah.
paid employee is great, but your
right.
lowest paid employee is in six-figure
Right.
digits. So because we're connected to the community, we can talk about the people who work for us,
Right.
who make a different wage.
Right.
You might not have that of other service industries because they don't get to be out in the community and connected to the community. They're doing their service-related business.
Right.
So we can be that voice. I found we've had to be the voice of childcare affordability and childcare challenges since the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I feel like people are finally listening and they're understanding that it's a business case
Right.
and that childcare is not a want.
Right.
It's a need.
It's
We used to
definitely a
say food, shelter, right? Those were critical components of life living. Childcare's
Yeah, for sure.
Childcare is now on the radar, and I am using my voice talking to anybody who
Yeah.
will listen to me about that. And then affordable housing. We're not in the affordable housing business. There have been Ys over time, and I think Nashville even had housing as part of its component back in the day. But we talk about that a lot because our employees are in that position, and the members we serve are in that position. And so we're trying to make sure that people understand what affordable housing means. And it's not always talking about the lowest income level. It's that next level
Right.
that doesn't get state assistance,
Yep.
that doesn't, if you don't
Doesn't
qualify,
qualify because you just make a little bit too much. You just right above that threshold.
you make $13.50 an hour, you don't get state assistance for childcare.
Exactly.
Imagine what it costs you in your wages to pay for childcare. Why would you work?
Right. Exactly.
You're on the negative end of that
Right.
at that point. So we need to put people in a position who are making $13, $14, $15 an hour or $17 an hour. We need to put them in a position that they can grow in their career so they can make 25, 30, 40. The only way they're going to do that is if they have affordable childcare so they can go to work, if they have a safe place for their kid to be, if they have a safe place to be themselves.
Yeah, I learned really quickly about childcare because I had no idea. Because my son stayed. He was a pandemic baby, born in May 2020, and so we kept him at home with us until just this past March. Until waiting lists are long, and then you see the prices. Like who can afford $300 a week? And then he was like, you realize, that there's not much subsidizing when it comes to daycare. And then that's not including diapers and other things. I'm like, this is who can afford this? This is crazy.
And you know what happens is the daycare can't even afford the $300.
Exactly.
They're charging $300 because that's all people can pay or will pay, but it doesn't pay for the service.
Exactly.
Childcare workers have historically been the lowest paid employees for a long time. They're not that way in the YMCA. But in order to do that, businesses have to step up and fund some of this. We can't rely just on government, and we can't rely just on parents.
Right.
There's not enough.
Right.
It's too important.
Right.
It's like public education, the value of that. We need to do some of the same things in childcare, and the problem is we're so far behind that it's going to be really hard to catch up, and it's going to take some big, innovative thought ideas to do that. We do an amazing job with school-age childcare, 119 sites, 6,000 kids, summer care, summer camp, but early childhood education, like you said, the wait lists are staggering.
It's crazy. Well, I wish I can go back to my YMCA days. Well, I think life was much simpler. Chris, I want to give you an opportunity to just close us out. One, thank you. This has been amazing. The YMCA is just near and dear to my heart. I played basketball in YMCA leagues. Before school, after school, had the meals, gave my school counselors trouble, gave them headaches, but those are some of my just fondest memories of just childhood, being a part of the YMCA, and when I look back and I think about some of those YMCA after school counselors, I thought they called counselors.
Yeah.
The counselors. And I realized that they was only like 22, 20, they was
Right.
really, and I'm like, I'm in the 7th grade. I'm thinking, man, you're old. You're 22, 20, and I think about it now, like, oh man, I was so wrong. But just going back and just thinking about those things and talking about the why, has brought back a lot of just great memories. But it's also, I've learned a lot about the impact. Because as a child, you see the why, like, hey, I'm just having fun, and this is where I go, and my counselor, and I go home, right? And you see like the physical part of it. People go to work out, but you don't know about the impact, the connecting part that you do, and the resources that it can be till you get much older, or you just may not be aware at all. And so I appreciate you highlighting that and bringing that to light for many of us who may not know. With that, I wonder if there's anything else that you would like to leave with us that we may not know that's coming, that the Y is doing, some more your plans and visions that you and your team want to do. But I want to leave that time and space for you to talk about some of that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun with you today. It's always great to talk about the YMCA. I think I'll leave you with this: your viewers and your listeners, the Y needs you. We can't do this alone. This is a community endeavor. And what you see publicly, you see in the advertisements, and you see when you go in the YMCA with this great weight equipment and beautiful gyms and awesome pools and playgrounds and things, that's what we have the opportunity to advertise. There's so much more to the Y. I think about Black achievers and Hispanic achievers who are coaching kids on how to be college and career ready, who are positioning kids for leadership roles in their community. You have a program like Youth in Government with thousands of kids across the state that are learning civics. They're being taught, how do you make real change? Because you're going to make real change through laws. You can't always do it through a computer or social network. Right. You need to learn how to really do it. And so the YMCA is doing all these programs and services and giving back, and we're doing it in a way where these kids don't have the barriers to do that. But the only way we do that is if the community buys in, supports financially the YMCA. Right. So whether that's a donation or if you can afford it, pay for your membership, get your kids involved in a program. You're going to be involved in a program that strives for equity, that wants everybody to have an opportunity. So it's important to us. It's important to the community, and we'll continue to have incredibly great spaces, but make sure that you understand that you being involved in that great space impacts so much greater.
How can community find out more about these programs, camps, and things? Because I found out a lot of times people just don't know because they don't know. And so how can people find out and know and potentially pass on the information if they don't necessarily need the services or don't have kids or anything, but they can say, hey, I have a friend, or I know a mom or a dad that could really use the resources and just the great environment that the YMCA provides.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you don't have to have kids to really support, something like Black Achievers. We need community leaders to come speak to the kids, to teach and to share their wisdom. We need people to be involved volunteer-wise to fill the shelves of the pantry that we talked about. Right. You want to come serve pancakes. It's the most amazing experience. We'll love to have you serve pancakes. Or you can do the other stuff that the YMCA does. So our website's filled with a lot of great information. YMCAMidTN.org, so YMCAMiddleTennessee.org. And then we have a ton of social media. So if you live in East Nashville, follow the Margaret Maddox YMCA. I failed to mention, too, YCAP is a facility that was destroyed by the tornado a few years ago, and we're finally getting a chance to reopen that. That's an amazing space for kids that are marginalized, that are on the border of success or failure. Right. That's a program that we're going to open next month. Okay. It's going to be great. We need volunteers all the time for those kinds of things. And if you want to give back to your community, you want to mentor a child in need, or you just want to make sure that there's service and support for all people, connect with us.
Chris, I appreciate your time. And again, congratulations on your Nashville Leadership Nashville class. acceptance. Hopefully y'all get I want y'all to get a lot of homework. But no, thank you again for your time, your availability, and just the anniversary coming up on 1 year with Middle Tennessee here in Nashville. But just the long tenure work you've done, rooted in the community. I appreciate you, your work, and just your continued growth and willing to learn to be open. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and love what you do. Keep that community connected. We appreciate you.
Hey, thanks. I'm calling on Chris now. We doing something at the Y. I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna do something.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Chris.